It's my pleasure to kick off the second session this afternoon, focusing on energy efficient solutions delivering on the Green Deal. We have a distinguished panel of 6 different panelists from different companies representing different technologies. And we're going to hear about how the energy sector is investing heavily in making their technologies and solutions more efficient. And today we'll hear directly from them, the industry, presenting the latest developments on energy efficiency. I'll turn it over now to Kelvin from Power Engineering International, who will be the moderator for the last session today.
I can. Hello, Hans.
Hello.
It's a pleasure to be with you again this year for your annual conference, and a very good afternoon to everyone who's joining us today, or indeed a good morning or an evening, depending where you're joining us from. I hope you have perhaps had time to tune into the session so far today. If you haven't, you've missed some great ones. The good news is there's even more good ones to come, both tomorrow, but first and foremost right now, this afternoon. We've got a great session lined up now where we're going to be talking about energy efficiency, which, as we all know, is a cornerstone of the Green Deal and the EU's Fit for 55 package. We're going to be exploring this afternoon the technologies that are going to enable the energy efficiency success stories. We've got presentations from 6 technology providers, and they're going to talk through the recent developments in their technologies, where they're up to right now, where they could be very soon in the future, and how they see the role of energy efficiency evolving in the European energy transition. So, as I say, 6 great speakers. I'll introduce them to you just before their presentations. Each of them are going to do a brief presentation to you, after which I might ask a couple of questions, but then we will get through all 6 of them, and then at the end of that we will have a Q&A session in which your participation is key. So do feel free to send us in a question. The 6 experts do actually have the ability to answer your questions in writing during the session. So if you have a very specific question, it may be a very specific technical question for one of the speakers, don't wait until the end of the session, just fire it in then, and it might be they answer it personally to you as the session is going on. If your question is more broad and perhaps for all of the speakers, then that's great too. I will ask it to them towards the end of the session. So, but as I say, if a question occurs, fire it in straight away, so you get to the head of the queue when we come to the Q&A part at the end. Okay, oh, by the way, I'm Kelvin Ross. I'm the editor-in-chief of Power Engineering International. Before I introduce everyone else in the session, I just realised I haven't introduced myself. So I've known Hans and COGEN Europe for some years, and I've moderated their sessions before. They're always great. They're fantastically informative, and it's always a pleasure to be a friend of COGEN Europe. Now I will get on and introduce our first speaker of the afternoon, who is Alex Marshall. Alex is a Group Business Development and Marketing Director at Clarke Energy. Alex, over to you. The floor is yours.
Thank you. So, great to speak to you. This is my presentation on energy efficient solutions delivering the EU Green Deal. And I'd also like to suggest we should open this up a little bit other than just energy efficiency. We should also consider time efficiency and carbon efficiency of energy. So I'll outline who we are as a business, general trends, and I'm going to set these technological solutions in amongst trends for the individual countries in which we operate in Europe, and give you some project examples. So Clarke Energy, we operate in 28 countries in Europe: France, Ireland, Romania, Greece from the European Union, and also UK, still in Europe, but maybe not in the EU. Supporting net zero, all of our projects seek to support the energy transition. We've got 7.3 gigawatts of Jenbacher capacity installed globally. Look forward to Carl's presentation later, and it was good to hear from Marco before. We seek to lower costs and carbon emissions. We add value to the core product by being a turnkey EPC contractor. And we also have a strong focus on after-sales support and maintenance. And as a business, we're part of the Kohler Company of Wisconsin, which is an $8 billion turnover US organization. So our product range, the INNIO's Janbacher gas engines, 0.25 to 10 megawatts. Also TPI's biogas upgrading systems, a membrane technology coming from Italy. INNIO, we see them as focusing on the design, development, manufacture of the core engine, whereas Clarke Energy is differentiated by being focused on the installation design, project management, the works, the commissioning, the parts stockholding, and the customer-facing element of that partnership. So we've seen the demand from customers change from basic supply of gas engine gensets and base load CHP modules to more and more complex solutions whereby we need to deliver turnkey power plants in remote areas, or alternatively and more commonly, and as was mentioned earlier in the early presentations, the need to hybridize with other technologies. So initially we saw this from energy storage systems, from solar PV and renewables, but also more and more interesting things like heat pumps, which I was interested to hear by Didier's presentation from Enlit earlier today. So general trends observed, again echoing some of the comments, the need to decarbonize the fuel source from CHP units, hydrogen, biomethane, and biogas. Also, maybe not so clearly defined in the earlier calls, but the uncertain position of CHP during the transition. We recognize that fossil fuels are needed in the short term. It's still delivering tangible carbon savings, as recent studies that we delivered by the Association for Decentralized Energy in the UK for roughly the next 10 to 15 years. And how CHP sits with position relative to heat pumps. Heat pumps are just heat, they don't generate the electricity as well. And also energy storage systems, which don't generate energy. And I think CHP has a little bit of a confusing position right there. Also, the need to move from the concept that we're all used to as an industry of baseload CHP to flexible CHP and hybrids. So I'd also say we need to also move the discussion from energy efficiency through to time efficiency. There's no use generating electricity at high efficiency along with heat when the electricity isn't needed because you have so much wind and solar on the grid. And then carbon efficiency, how the balance fits. So some country trends and case studies from the regions. So from France, again, echoing some of Didier's comments before, from a CHP perspective, we've seen the use of CHP widely in greenhouses, commercial and industrial district heating networks. There's a trend towards smaller CHPs following the removal of the CR16 and CR16 legislation, a general trend to reducing of natural gas CHP on the whole. And that's also enforced on the flexible generation side by CO2 limits for peaking stations and low peak power prices on the French network, largely driven by the nuclear network that they have supporting the grid. And future hydrogen, yes, there's a lot of noise on France on hydrogen, but it would be good to understand exactly how that transition is going to happen. Biogas, again, we're starting to see move towards smaller biogas CHP installations, which are cost sensitive, and biogas upgrading technology with biomethane, and also more interestingly, carbon capture from the biogas upgrading systems. So slightly old facility, but nonetheless good from a technology innovation perspective, is actually utilizing electricity and heat from landfill gas power plants. Typically, they're electricity only. Here, a project with Clarke and Veolia, supplying not only the renewable electricity to the grid, but also recovering large-scale heat for a district energy network, and one of the largest projects in France, 17 megawatts. Nice project. And then at the smaller end of the scale, the trend for a substitute technology for CHP being biogas upgrading, often membrane-based systems, stripping the CO2 and biomethane from the biogas and recovering and using that CO2 to give a renewable source of CO2, which is in demand at the moment, ironically, with the surplus that we have of CO2 in the atmosphere. Greece, quite an exciting market at the moment from the perspective of biogas CHPs rather than natural gas CHPs. So the feed-in tariffs is supporting the delivery of biogas CHP to at least 2022, mainly at 0.5 and 10 megawatt nodes, mainly for agricultural biogas with some waste biogas. But there's some questions after that period of time, what's going to happen when the tariff expires, and is there going to be sufficient feedstock to meet further expansion of those facilities? Greater acceptance of CHP and the gas availability, particularly on mainland Greece, but there is a challenge more widely in Greece with the lack of availability of natural gas on the islands. We're seeing greenhouses, paper mills, and commercial industrial heating networks as potentials for that market. Romania is another place that we operate. There's significant support from the EU with respect to delivering the green energy transition, but this good statements lack the actual action. 7 gigawatts of capacity is planned by 2030, meaning more and more unstable power network. And there's a big political logjam with bringing new legislation through. There's still significant opportunities to improve energy efficiency for CHP, for district energy schemes, but because of that lack of support mechanism, we're not seeing them going through. Flexible generation and peak services is becoming higher and higher up the list of importance. Hydrogen, again, there's a lot of talk in the market, but no real support from a Romanian perspective. And on biogas, they're behind from the EU legislation for organic waste treatments. You've got waste, warehousing of waste on existing dump sites, and feed-in tariffs and enforcement are all inhibited by this lockdown, which happens politically. So an example of a project in Romania, a greenhouse glasshouse with CO2 fertilization, 12 hectares of space there, tomato growing, seeking to have it localized energy efficient power, 13 megawatts across four engines and 2 phases of installation. Likewise, from a peaking power station perspective, this is Nova Power and Gas in Cluj, Romania, and again, a similar sort of size facility with fast start capabilities on the engines. Ireland is an interesting one again. We're seeing strong opportunities in the data center market in particular. The data center market in Ireland is driven by the position of the island with respect to the USA and mainland Europe. There's going to be the requirement for on-site generation having to support firm grid connection, and grid connections over 20 megawatts requiring dual fuel capability. The large installed fleets of wind turbines and renewable energy is driven by the DS3 auctions, but we're seeing there's significant electricity supply challenges predicted by EirGrid with the closure of old assets. Hydrogen's on the radar, essentially from a curtailment of surplus wind perspective, and biogas has been, on the cards for some time, but the growth in the market has lacked the long-term potential. So certainly that is an opportunity for the Irish market to install more capability. And last but not least, excuse me for mentioning the UK, whilst it isn't in the EU, suffers some of the same challenges on the continent. Transition to net zero is high profile, and the reducing base load power from coal and nuclear power stations. That with this thing that doesn't necessarily match is the requirement for huge levels of electrification of heat and transport if they're going to electrify heat through heat pumps. So where does all this electricity come from? CHP is still financially attractive till around the 2030s, and CO2 reducing till 2030s. With peaking capability required technically to balance the UK grid, but unfortunately we largely lack the examples before from Kiel with the heat recovery system. So there are opportunities to increase heat, peaking efficiency using natural gas and recovery of heat for district energy schemes. Biomethane is being supported by the Green Gas Support Scheme, the RTFO, with some exciting early potential CHP carbon capture, utilization and storage demonstrators in the market, which we're developing. We hope to be able to talk about those in the near future. And we're also starting to see, whilst the investment in hydrogen is not necessarily the same level penned from some of the European Union countries, there are some tangible projects coming through from the hydrogen strategy in and around both the northwest and northeast areas. We started to see early H2 demonstrators, both for blue and green hydrogen on the fuel switching program, which is going to be running over the next 2 years. And we're hopefully going to be starting to see some availability of hydrogen more physically from the 2025 from the HyNet scheme in the northwest of England. So some examples of projects. These are turnkey peaking power stations, roughly 20 megawatts apiece. We're seeing many hundreds of megawatts of these stations required to technically balance the intermittency of wind and solar power. And more interestingly, I was actually pleased to demonstrate a tangible opportunity of what Didier was referring to earlier on, a hybridized heat pump and CHP project. This is the first one of a significant scale that we're aware of. This is 9 Janbacher CHP units. The CHPs provide electricity and heat with CO2 recovery for air enrichment. But more interestingly, is the utilization of some of the electricity from the CHPs to support an ammonia heat pump, so a zero carbon fluid for the heat pump, and amplifying that electricity to roughly 4 or 5 times the heat amount. And there we can see the installation itself. So the heat pumps are water source heat pumps provided by existing and new reservoirs, which float on pontoons on those water sources and provide surplus electricity for the facility. So that's one of the most interesting ones we have technically, and I'm happy to have some questions either now or at the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was fascinating, really interesting. I've got a number of questions. It's interesting the trends that you highlighted there, how the similarities between some areas, and yet they are the growth in hydrogen is slightly different in the UK than it is in Europe. One quick question for you, Alex, is that, well, it may not be that quick, but we'll soon find out. You talked about the CHP having an uncertain position and then also a confusing position, and then you talked particularly latterly there about the UK, its transition to net zero. What do you see the role of CHP in that transition to net zero? How has it contributed, and perhaps how is CHP itself transitioning on that journey?
Yeah, well, I think it's twofold. So, as has been echoed many times before in the conference already, is the carbon reducing opportunities for non-abated CHP, at least for the next 10 years. Then we're seeing a degree of renewable fuels coming into the grid, but the renewable biomethane isn't in the short term going to anywhere near offset the need for natural gas. And the other challenge is, yes, I think hydrogen is happening, but it's probably going to become at least 20 years off or so. So there is a gap and a bit of a question mark on that period of time with respect to CHP. I think it's going to come through from the need for firm generation capacity on the grid and the need to time shift the balancing of that power on the network to balance the intermittency of wind and solar and the demand and supply gap.
Okay, great. Thanks, Alex. We'll return to you with some more questions later on, but for the moment, I'll ask Stefan to join us. Stefan Liesner is Head of Public Affairs and Public Relations at 2G Energy. Stefan?
Thanks a lot, Kelvin, and also thanks to Alex and to Clarke. I think that my presentation is maybe a perfect link to what has been said already. So I don't put a big effort on the markets itself. So thanks a lot, Alex, once again. So I'm having a look on CHP from a little bit from a political perspective, how this fits into the energy systems as a whole, and also how, let's say, hydrogen. It was also mentioned before, but how hydrogen is used in detail, or how it could work in detail with the CHP. I named this presentation a little bit, it's a little provocation, let's say, the logical option, especially here in Germany or also in other countries. Let's say the mood against CHP has a little bit decreased, or we felt that at least. Over the recent times, so we call it now the logical option. And luckily, the new, let's say, or with the new, the new parliament here in Germany, I mean, CHP, the recent studies, everything or everybody is, let's say, mentioning CHP again, which is first of all positive. Maybe just one slide about 2G, who we are. 2G stands for its founders, Grothold Gausling. Nice coincidence. It also stands for the cogeneration, so the simultaneous generation of electricity and heat, which is quite funny. We're also active both in the natural gas sector, but also in the renewable sector, such as biogas. This is where we came from. We have our own R&D department. That means we have our own engines in the power range up to 500 kilowatts. Meanwhile, we have 9 national and international subsidiaries with 700 employees worldwide. Since 2007, listed at the German stock market, which gave us the opportunity to get in, let's say, good cooperation with all the big utilities in Germany. We have installed thousands of plants worldwide, more than 50 countries, with a turnover of 236 million euros. I'd like to start the content of the presentation with this little sheet. I guess everybody of the audience knows what a CHP is. You put gas in and you get heat, power, and maybe steam or cold out. This is just a basic slide, but why do I mention that? As it was already said before, efficiency first is one of the key or cornerstones of the Green Deal and the Fit for 55 package. And CHP in itself is efficiency first. And it doesn't matter if you have a CHP driven on natural gas, which is already now, let's say, contributing to a reduction of the overall CO2 emissions. But also when it comes to the use of hydrogen or biomethane in terms of the value of the gas. So that when you have to use hydrogen in the energy sector, then because it's still very expensive, no matter what color the hydrogen has, but with the CHP, you can make, let's say, or you can generate most of the energy out of hydrogen. And I think this is very important to mention again and again, also when it comes to discussions with political decision makers. How do we see the role of a CHP in the future? As you may know, in Germany, we do not only face the challenge of getting rid of coal, but also getting rid of nuclear energy. So 10 years ago, we still had 25% of our energy mix from nuclear energy. We're now down to around 10. And next year, we will have to be at 0%. And since all countries around also have to, let's say, decrease their amount of coal in the system, it's not that easy to get electricity or to get energy from the countries nearby. So that's why there's no nuclear or whatever in this slide here. What it says, we all agree. On the top left-hand side, most of the energy in the future will come from electricity and heat, from solar and wind, of course, but you cannot store it. And that's why we have to, find a solution to make use of this, electricity, of this energy from wind and solar, and to store it. And this is where hydrogen comes into place. And this is also where we see one of the main benefits of a CHP plant. Everybody is speaking about hydrogen, but nobody really knows what will be the future. Will we have decentral hydrogen valleys somewhere, decentral electrolyzers in the industry? Will we have, hydrogen in the grid? So do we make use of existing gas grids and increase the share of hydrogen? Or will we have pure hydrogen pipelines? For example, in the German Ruhr area, they're talking about that. Nobody really knows that. But what we know and what we can ensure as the CHP industry or as a manufacturer, that with our products, you don't have any kind of dead end. That means you can run it today, maybe with biogas or with natural gas or whatever. And as soon as the amount of H2 in the grid increases, or we get hydrogen grids or whatever in some decades, then CHP is still the optimal solution and you don't have any dead ends. And I think that this is really one of the main key advantages of CHP in general. But also from a view of a manufacturer, this forces us to find solutions. I was saying we grew up out of the German biogas market, and it was normal to run a CHP 8,000 hours a year, and that's it, quite easy. Of course, this can't be the case in the future. So CHP need to get more flexible. So when you see the middle of this page, presumably we have to increase the size of one CHP with lower operating hours a year. Additionally, of course, we cannot say natural gas is the future. It's not. So we have to be sure that each CHP we deliver today can be retrofitted with renewable gases in the future. That's the second very big task we have as a manufacturer. And the third one is, of course, the digitalization. So we have to be sure that everything we do can be connected to software systems, that it can be linked to to big utilities, so that there is an immediate reaction between the electricity or the heat market and the technology. And of course, in addition, when we will need CHP energy in the future, then this will be the case. A day like today here in Germany, when I look out the window, there's not much wind, there's not much solar. So at times like these, it's very crucial to be reliable in the system. And that's why it's also very important to have, let's say, things like remote control, remote maintenance also be done reliably via software solutions. Okay, hydrogen CHP, just very briefly, I don't want to get too much in the details. Where's the difference? Hydrogen CHP compared to natural gas. I mean, you have to have a gas-air mix at the end. When using natural gas or biogas, you mix it in the gas mixer, it goes through the turbocharger, you cool it down, and then the mixture goes into the combustion chamber. When you have a hydrogen CHP, you only compress the air in the turbocharger and the cooler, and the hydrogen is being, let's say, added to the air only very close in front of the combustion chamber due to this other deviating physical characteristics of the gas. A big advantage is, this is a real project, for example, in Haßfurt. I think this was already mentioned several times and presented also by COGEN Europe. So where you have a combination. That means you do not have to rely only on H2, you have it or not. So you can also combine it with a regular natural gas pipe. And I think this is also very important for this transitioning period over the next 5 to 10 years or whatever, so that you can run it either with natural gas or with hydrogen. For 2G, for example, up to 40% hydrogen content in the gas, we can use the normal execution, and above 40% of hydrogen content, we have to have our, let's say, special port injection solution. What you can see here on the top, so where this gas only gets added only very close to the combustion chamber. What is the technological status and in terms of the development? So we started already, back in 2011-12. So as you can see, 10 years ago with development on hydrogen engines. We installed the first one, a 6-cylinder. You see this yellow row here. We installed the first one back in 2014, and at that time, the 250 kW engine of 2G. So 6-cylinder, natural gas, 250 kW, with hydrogen operation at that time, 120 kW output. Then the one in Haßfurt, for example, which you just saw, 140 kW. The new ones we have delivered 170 kW, and in 3 years' time, is our target to be absolutely parallel, also 250 kW with hydrogen operation. And this is also the same like the 4-cylinder, 8-cylinder, or 12-cylinder engine. So this is also one of the tasks we have to ensure for the customer that at the end he gets the same output. Those ones are the real projects we have already realized, which operate on 100% hydrogen. There's the one in Berlin, as I mentioned already, back in 2014. There's the one in Haßfurt. There's also one in Dubai. I have a separate slide on that. Then one in Apex, in Rostock at Apex, manufacturer of hydrogen components. Then there's also a separate slide, Essling. There's a nice university solution there. Then we have, meanwhile, 3 projects in Japan, which unfortunately we're not allowed to publish yet, namely. And then one additional in the UK. And currently, especially in the recent 6 months, it grows, and the number of inquiries is increasing. So there's really, there comes, let's say, movement in the market. That's the one I was mentioning in Essling. So that's, I think, a quite good future case study how industry solutions could look like. So again, here you have solar and wind. You have, overall, there is a big university, and there's a building with 500 residential units, 1,800 students. There's a local solar wind park nearby. They have a decentralized electrolyzer. They have a small H2 storage. They can feed H2 into the natural gas grid. They have a local heating grid, also supported by a heat pump. There's battery storage, e-vehicles. So I think that's a quite good case study that you cannot say one technology is better than the other. than the other. So it's just a combination of everything. And I think this one here is a really, really good demonstration of that. Then the one I was mentioning in Dubai together with Siemens, where there's a large-scale solar park. Currently, there's 1 gigawatt. In the next 10 years or 9 years, they want to increase that to 5 gigawatt. So large-scale combination of PV and CHP. So as you can see here on the right-hand side on the bottom, a combination where also the CHP is part of this big project. Yeah, just to summarize it, maybe back to the beginning. Why the logical option? Because CHP plants cover the need for the residual energy when wind is not shining and wind is not blowing, sun is not shining. In many European countries, especially in Germany, the importance of natural gas will even increase in the middle term. And when you have to use natural gas, then in the most effective manner, and that is CHP. Then another thing which is also quite important, I think, is the short project periods for CHP plants. That means it's not a big, let's say, gas plant somewhere, somewhere nowhere, where you have several megawatts. So CHP plants at our scale can be realized within a few weeks or even a few months. And also very important investment in CHP are not a dead end. So every CHP installed today can be retrofitted for the operation with hydrogen in the future. So any investors, they don't need to be scared. So they don't make they just don't make a wrong decision. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Stefan. That was fascinating. I was determined I wasn't going to ask you about hydrogen because I think the other speakers will tackle hydrogen too, and I was going to save the questions. But I'm intrigued, so I am going to ask about it. You said you were seeing movement in the market towards hydrogen. I'm just wondering, how much, what does that movement, equate to sort of percentage-wise compared to other forms of CHP? And how do you see that accelerating? Do you expect it to suddenly take off over the short term, or will it be a gradual? I know everyone's talking about hydrogen, but in reality, will the shift to hydrogen be more steady?
I think there's this movement comes from several sides. I mean, I was mentioning, for example, Japan, where we have now sold some of those plants. I mean, there is no funding scheme or whatever behind it. It's just the companies there. They realize, okay, we have to have an alternative solution, and I want to be the first mover. And in Germany, for example, there's also a lot of movement in the markets from local Stadtwerke or utilities. They see the example of Haßfurt, for example. And I mean, this year we have had electricity prices on certain days, in certain hours, where we have hundreds of thousands of euros per megawatt hour. And where if they have had, let's say, hydrogen CHP, then they wouldn't have had any problem in that moment. And that's why, I mean, this entirely fits our argumentation that in the future, hydrogen CHP, of course, it will always be more expensive than wind and solar, absolutely sure. But when there's the hour you need it, then this kilowatt hour out of a CHP is quite expensive. And this is, I mean, it's not the case that we're getting hundreds of inquiries day by day or whatever. But let's say compared to 2 years ago, we had maybe, I don't know, 5 or 10 inquiries, and now we have 50 a year for hydrogen CHP. And you see in the discussions, especially with the utilities, it's in there. It gets in their minds. Maybe if we have the time, I had the quite nice discussion with the German ministry, and everybody's saying, okay, we need funding for hydrogen or whatever, and they said maybe we don't need funding because the utility companies, they will realize they have let's say contracts with their customers, and they need to find a solution how to, let's say, fulfill their contracts on delivering energy, and that's why they will have to rely on hydrogen in the future. Which is quite interesting. I don't know if that's all, and personally, I don't think that's enough. But this is the movement I was talking about.
Absolutely, but and you're right. It is an interesting train of thought. Stefan, thank you very much for now. You'll be joining us again later.
Yeah.
Now, if I could ask Carl to join us. Just before we go to Carl's presentation, so Carl Reichers is Vice President of Product Management and Marketing at INNIO Jenbacher. As I said at the beginning, if you do have a question for any of the panelists, in particular relation to what you just heard, do send them in. Alex, who we heard from first, has been busy answering in writing some questions that have come in, so do keep them coming. But, yeah, Alex and Stefan are now both available. But meanwhile, over to Carl. The floor is yours, Carl. It's a pleasure to see you again.
Yeah, thanks very much. Plan to give you a little perspective of what we feel will be the role of CHP and where we see current misunderstandings of the role and our perspective on it. Where we see the market today is with the energy transition, there are three key challenges. And I'll start with the first one, which is the growing power demand or growing electricity demand, driven by mobility, heat, digitalization, all increasing electricity demands from the grid. And at the same time, we see, differing from country to country, obviously, but generally phasing out of coal power, and for some countries as well, Germany in particular, phasing out of nuclear power. That, of course, is creating a gap between supply and demand, which where the solution mainly is an expansion of renewables, but at the same time, for a transition period, the use of natural gas to bridge the gap. At the same time, this increase and expansion of renewables is creating the second challenge, which is the volatility of the renewables that somehow needs to be complemented by other technologies. The biggest example is always this cold, dark doldrum. And a thing that is often forgotten is that we're facing two demand peaks, basically, across Europe, which is not just the electricity, but with electrifying heat, we are facing an even increasing gap between demand of supply during the cold winter months. So just intraday storage will not do the trick. We'll need longest term storage of energy to cover electricity and heat demands over the full year based on a renewable energy system. The solution for that is and will be chemically stored energy. Now, today, we have the chemically stored energy in mainly fossil fuels. That obviously needs to change in the future, making chemically stored energy renewable. One of the key solutions here being hydrogen. And that makes us look at the third challenge. There is a huge infrastructure challenge ahead of us that we need to cover, which is creating an infrastructure that's capable of using the chemically stored energy from the future, but at the same time also covering the increasing electricity demands. And from our perspective, the solution for that is flexibility of the generation as close as possible to the point of use to basically relax the demands on the infrastructure and on the grid. And at the same time, all the investments made today need to be ready for a conversion to renewable fuels as they gradually become more available. The problem that we're seeing today is that there's a lot of discussion on how the final solution might eventually look like, and that we should only be supporting fully renewable technologies, etc. The unpopular truth is that we're looking at a remaining carbon budget, basically, that we can use up if we want to meet the 1.5 or 2 degree Celsius temperature increase targets, which basically means every day that we continue at today's carbon intensity is using up that remaining budget, and means that the day after, where we finally start reducing our emissions, we need to reduce even steeper in order to meet the 1.5 degree target. And neutrality by 2050 may not do the trick anymore if we wait too long until we start acting. And the key point here is that we have technologies available today that, even if they're not CO2 neutral with natural gas, they are a significant step from where we are today, looking at alternative technologies that we're still using. And that's especially the case when we're comparing coal-fired power generation, or power and heat generation even, to natural gas-fired generation, be it with gas turbines or gas engines. And really the key point is using the waste heat, which is basically the trick for CHP. So power generating electricity when it's needed in the grid, but then using the waste heat to cover heat demands, which are often open at the same point of time. And of course, then the outlook into the future with gas engine CHPs after either today running on biofuels, be it biogas or biomethane, or then in the future when running on natural gas today, once being converted to hydrogen or other synthetic renewable fuels, will also be fully carbon neutral. What this means is there is an option to act today by investing into flexible electricity-driven CHP. And we wanted to give you an example. We've just picked Germany as an example, but the picture is similar or even more extreme for other countries which are more coal power based. Of course, for countries that are already today largely hydropower or nuclear based, the picture is different. But what you're seeing on the graph is on the bottom, on the x-axis, you can see the carbon intensity of gram of CO2 per kilowatt hour emitted. And on the y-axis, so the height of the graph shows you the number of hours at which electricity is produced in the grid at this CO2 intensity. And it's quite impressive for Germany to see that, if you remember the numbers from the previous page, which is a gas engine based CHP at 225 grams of CO2 per kilowatt hour, there's a very little amount of hours where the CO2 intensity in the German grid mix is actually lower than a gas engine based CHP plant. And even if you look at the extreme of having a power only gas engine peaker, where we're looking at roughly 480 grams per kilowatt hour, even there, the CO2 intensity of the German electricity mix is higher than this purely electricity focused gas engine for almost 2,000 hours a year. Which means that 90% of the time, when comparing to today's grid electricity mix in Germany, it's actively avoiding CO2 if you're running a gas engine based CHP plant. And we found that quite impressive, especially given the discussions that we have with industrial customers that are looking to decarbonize their operations and are entertaining discussions or entertaining different investment opportunities to do that, or options to decarbonize. One of them being looking into renewable electricity tariffs, and the alternative being operating their own gas engine based CHP plant. And while the CHP plant is of course not carbon neutral today, it does in reality reduce the carbon intensity of the generation mix, while just procuring a green electricity tariff, unless it is from new capacity additions, doesn't change the generation mix at all. It just changes the demand mix of all the remaining consumers from the grid that are then basically using browner electricity because a few are taking the green part of the electricity mix out of the mix. So if a gas engine-based CHP is operated less than 7,900 hours a year, of course, this needs to be the hours with an electricity demand that's higher than the renewable production at the specific point of time. Operation of a gas engine CHP plant, even on natural gas, is an active contribution to the energy transition and is an active contribution to reducing carbon intensity and CO2 footprint. I want to close with an example of what's possible today from a technology perspective when looking at the overall efficiency. We have shown on the left basically the concept of CHP. I think that's clear. Stefan Liesner has explained it earlier. This is just a different graphic to explain the same story. And the 90% total energy efficiency is something that can even be significantly exceeded. And that is the case when combining a CHP plant with a heat pump. One example that we have is a CHP plant in Germany, Neuenfelde, based on our 412C engine, and then combined with the heat pump, which means that we're able to use not only cooling water and exhaust heat, but also the convection heat from the cooling of the engine room. We can then achieve 99% total efficiencies, which really means using almost all of the primary energy. What this means is that flexible operation of a CHP, so electricity demand-driven operation of a CHP plant, is not an alternative to renewables. It is complementing an increase of renewables, and doing that with maximum efficiency today. And at the same time, all the installations are ready for a hydrogen conversion tomorrow. Hydrogen conversion only possible, obviously, once the hydrogen is available, and of course, the economic situation today with high hydrogen prices is the only thing that's preventing that from happening. The technology is ready. We've demonstrated that a year ago in Hamburg when we converted an existing 416 engine, a 1 megawatt CHP unit, to 100% hydrogen operation to show what is possible already today. And all of the engines which we're offering are ready to be converted to hydrogen operation at a later point of time. We're also supporting the opportunity to increase admixing of hydrogen to the natural gas grid by having the engines ready for up to 25% hydrogen mixed with natural gas. That's available as an option, and then of course really conversion to 100% hydrogen once it becomes available. But the important message is we should start with decarbonizing today by supporting CHP plants, which means converting fossil fuels to heat and power with maximum efficiency, and then in the future using valuable renewable synthetic fuels at the highest efficiency as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. That was really interesting, and yeah, absolutely right. You know, the role of CHP is a complementary one to renewables. It's not an either or, and CHP gas is very much a bridging fuel to get us to net zero. You talked several times there about investments. If you're an investor out there and you have a pot of money that you're obliged to put towards something that fits some sort of green criteria, do you think the role and the benefits and that complementary role that you talked about at CHP is understood enough out there in that finance investor circle to get the investments that you've talked about that are needed?
My concern is that it isn't in some cases, and that there is a misperception of what options are available and what really is contributing to CO2 reduction, and what is maybe the cheapest kind of immediately available option to decarbonize, but isn't really doing the trick. And an impressive example is really green electricity tariffs based on Norwegian hydro power, which is essentially greenwashing. And you're showing, yeah, I only use green electricity. In reality, the result is that the Norwegian customers, from a balancing perspective, now end up having, I think, an 80% fossil energy mix of nuclear and coal-fired, even though they don't have any plants in country. And that's, I think, the most impressive example of where the discussion today is, or the decisions today are often going in the wrong directions, because there's a lack of clarity and understanding, and also probably a lack of guidance of which options are really doing something good and which options are looking good on paper, but in reality aren't changing anything. And unfortunately, I think that's the unfortunate news. There's a misperception of the role of natural gas CHP, because while it is, of course, not CO2 neutral today, it's probably one of the best options that are available today to move ahead. And it's ready to be converted to hydrogen once available. So there is no lock-in effect. Stefan has talked about it earlier. So from our perspective, it's probably one of the easiest available solutions today. And there is heat demands, there's electricity demands almost everywhere. So why not move forward and do something good by investing into it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interesting. We'll return a bit later to perhaps, how we get around those misconceptions and what could be done and who should be doing it. But first of all, Carl, thanks very much for your presentation. Next, we have Dora Adamo, who is the industrial segment and growth leader at Baker Hughes. Dora and I were on a webinar with Hans just as COP26 kicked off, and we were pondering what might happen. So at the end of Dora's presentation, we're going to find out what her takeaways were from COP. And meanwhile, Dora, lovely to see you again, and the floor is yours.
Great, thank you, Kelvin, and thanks to COGEN Europe for inviting me today. Good afternoon to all the people that is connected virtually today to this assembly, and let me say that it is a pleasure to be here and to discuss the importance of cogeneration in the context of the EU Green Deal. So before we move into the discussion and the topic of today, here is Baker Hughes in numbers. Baker Hughes is an energy technology company that provides solutions for the energy and industrial customers worldwide. We have operation in more than 120 countries, more than 54,000 employees, and almost $21 billion of revenues. So I'd like us to focus on one number on this page, that is the research and development spent of 2020. This is almost 600 million, a number that is increasing year over year, and that is simply because we strongly believe that the foundation of an energy technology company that wants to lead the energy transition is really around innovation and innovation of technology. And it is also thanks to our experience and our competencies that we have been able to award more than 3,000 patents in 2020. So I think that there are four big technology areas at the heart of the energy transition. Cogeneration is definitely the first one. And that is the one where I'm going to concentrate a little bit more later. But then when we talk about energy of the future, we need to talk also about hydrogen value chain. We need to talk about capture, treating, transportation, and possibly also utilization of carbon dioxide. And of course, given the peculiarity of the energy mix of the future, energy storage technologies, both short and long duration, will be very important in order to make the system work. So I want a little bit to reflect with you how is the power generation system transforming in the next years. Today in Europe, the production and the utilization of energy basically account for 75% of the EU greenhouse gas emissions. So decarbonizing the EU energy system will be critical in order to reach the 2030 climate objectives, but also in order to reach the ambitions of the EU long-term strategies. When we arrive to 2050, we basically will witness two macro trends. The first one is the energy generation that will continuously and consistently grow, driven by the increase of electricity demand. And then also the power generation mix that is transforming, driven by the renewable growth and their subsequent cheap renewable energy cost, but also driven by the CO2 commitments. Now, these dynamics will result in a global electricity system that will flip from being based on large conventional power plants that are running base load to a new paradigm of decentralized power with renewable energy and other flexible units, including batteries, peakers, but also CHP. So in this context, we believe that natural gas is expected to be a destination fuel because it will support the coal to gas switch, but also because its flexibility will be a fundamental complement to the renewable intermittency and will ensure the needed reliability and continuity of the power generation assets. So it is affordable, it is reliable, abundant, and we cannot imagine a future without natural gas. Nevertheless, in this context, the assets will decrease in size, where they will be distributed. What we are going to expect is also need of more connection among transmission and distribution. So the system complexity will require more data, more software, more analytics, more need of orchestrating the balance among supply and demand. So the digitalization of the infrastructure will play a key role. Now, in few words, as I'm stating in the bottom of the chart, is decentralization, decarbonization, system integration, and digitalization that will lead to clean integrated power solution. Now, so the role of the cogeneration is very important here. So we envision CHP to be at the backbone of this transformation. CHP meaning decarbonization of electricity and heat that is paramount to decrease the global emissions, and that will be needed beside, of course, the play of renewable to reach the net zero goal of Europe. Why is cogeneration so important? And thanks to my colleagues, I mean, we have mentioned today this multiple times, but number one is it is efficient, so consequently it means cutting of emissions. It enables the integration of the energy system, linking electricity, heat, and gas. It will enable the renewable integration, and already today, as we have seen, multiple solutions can already burn renewable fuels, including hydrogen. Cogeneration plant will enhance the energy system resilience, especially with the intermittency of renewable. And then, of course, last but not least, and that's quite important, it's able to reduce cost both at consumer level, but also for the society in general. And there have been multiple studies and case studies that have been demonstrating this. So at the core of many of the cogeneration solutions, there are gas turbine package. In the past years, Nuova Opinione and Baker Hughes developed a modern industrial gas turbine portfolio with the aim to maximize the profitability for cogeneration. So we bring on the market gas turbines that are going from 5 to almost 17 megawatt of power, with a high level of efficiency, both in simple cycle, but also in CHP configuration, thanks also to the technicality behind the variable area turbine nozzles that are able to make the high level of efficiency also when the turbine is running at partial load. Now, I want anyhow to concentrate on the last 2 points here, that is the portfolio roadmap to 100% hydrogen burnability, and also the possibility to maximize plant performances thanks to remote monitoring, diagnostic, and thanks to plant modeling. So we believe that gas turbines are important for the energy transition. And the reason why we believe this is because by design, gas turbines are flexible, are well suited for frequent starts and stops, and are able to provide fast response to grid demands, making them also complementary to other variable resistors. In addition to this, they have hydrogen fuel capabilities. In fact, we already said the positive effect that CHP has on the CO2 footprint, and this could be massively improved by the use of clean fuels such as hydrogen, that can be either blended with natural gas, but also 100% when we expect in the next 10 to 15 years, the cost of hydrogen will come down and will be more affordable. Now, I must say that the biggest challenge of burning hydrogen in gas turbine is essentially today maintaining the NOx emissions under control. Baker Hughes today is capable to burn 100% hydrogen with the injection of water, keeping NOx low. But while we are progressing to develop 100% technology with a dry low emission, last year we successfully tested for SNAM, that is the Italian natural gas transportation company, also a novel T12 running 10% hydrogen and capable to meet 15 ppm NOx. So decentralization is driven by the need of decarbonization, but decentralization is also a big trigger to digitalization, as we will even more need to integrate and orchestrate sources. A digital framework, so in the future, will be paramount, and we are talking here about advanced services on top of the standard iCenter services. The foundation layer here is a software application that can integrate the OEM machine together with the plant platform infrastructure. On top of this, there is a predictive maintenance and predictive analytics that are able to optimize the power unit's maintenance cost, based also on the overall plant maintenance schedule. And then last but not least, the carbon optimizer, that is a fully digital product that is aimed to reduce the carbon emissions. So the mission of Baker Hughes is to take energy forward, making it safer, cleaner, and more efficient for people and for the planet. In 2019, our CEO publicly committed on net zero emissions by 2050, and this is reflected in our strategy. Reduce emissions from our own operation is the very first strategic pillar that we have. Put our existing technology to work today, helping the industry to take immediate action to control and reduce emission is the second pillar. And the third one is, as we said at the beginning, invest in the development of new technology that will secure a low carbon energy world. I mean, I've been talking extensively about cogeneration, but I want to touch base on one important topic also, that is what we need in order to succeed in the energy transition. We need collaboration, we need engagement among all parties. Collaboration is primarily among the industry leaders, and here there are some examples on the partnership that we have been as Baker Hughes building in the past years. Last week, Baker Hughes announced an investment in Econa Power, that is a company that is developing turquoise hydrogen production technology. But also, when we talk about collaboration, it means with policymakers, with consumers, with producers, and also among us and associations. So Baker Hughes is an active member of COGEN Europe, as well as we are in the COGEN World Coalition. And we believe that this partnership and alliance will really help to support the cogeneration as a effective mean to use energy more efficiently, and cogeneration will really help Europe to achieve its ambitious target to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And after stating this, Kelvin, I'll pass it back to you.
Thanks, Dora. That final slide's really interesting, isn't it? It's that spirit of collaboration that I think that the whole industry now realizes is the way forward. No one person, company, technology has the answer, and even if they do, if they think they do, they can't get where they want to get to on their own. So it's a collaborative effort. It was a collaborative effort. It was hoped to be in Glasgow as well. Now, Dora, when you and I last met about 2 weeks ago, COP26 had just started, and we were wondering what the outcomes might be. So I'm now wondering. Now you know what the outcomes are. I wonder what your takeaways are from that. If you were disappointed or not, or was that the best we could have hoped for?
Well, I think that there has been good progress during COP26. I think so. Personally, I applaud the global methane pledges that were basically the EU and US-led initiatives that has been supported also by over 100 countries. Basically, 70% of the global economy and 50% of the methane emissions countries committed to lower the emission by 30% by 2030. So that is important and a great achievement. Another big highlight for me was around the India pledges they committed to the net zero emission by 2070, as well as the Nigerian one by 2060. Another one I'd like to mention is the climate agreement among the US and China to collaborate on carbon capture technology development. So to me, these are good news for the globe overall. I must say that so the announcement the IEA did around what will these pledges bring, and that is global warming limited to 1.8 degrees, is a good way to summarize this COP26. I think that overall, the big takeaway that I have is that it's evident that the energy sector, so us as well, guys, I mean, we are definitely part of this energy transition. The vision has been laid out now, as I was stating, collaboration is paramount, but also technology innovation and deliver on all the commitments that we are hearing will be fundamental in order to reach that goals.
Now then, our next speaker is Janša, who is Deputy Sales Director of TEDOM Group. Jiří, welcome to the session this afternoon. It's a pleasure to have you, and over to you.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Let me share the screen. It was very nice to hear all the other competitors to talk about the strategies and their plans how to get to the neutral emissions, and I can only agree that we need to have the gas as a bridging fuel in the midterm, and this is inevitable. What I will be talking about today is mainly a couple of areas, so maybe we will be overlapping a little bit with speakers. It already has been said from my perspective, but I will tell you a little bit about our readiness for hydrogen. I will tell you something about the future role of CHP. What do we see as a flexibility, what we did already in this area. I'll be talking also about the combination of the technologies, very simple one. Also, it has been mentioned from INNIO Jenbacher, how we can, by combination of heat pump, CHP, and economizer, get efficiency above 100%, which sounds ridiculous, but if we are counting with the lower heating value, and that's actually true. And lastly, I will be talking also about efficient treatment of emission, not only CO2, but also nitrogen, how we integrated it into our mid-class system. So let me start with a couple of words about TEDOM Group. What we do, we are, of course, engine manufacturer. We are producing CHPs. We are servicing them. We also do have engine factory where we are producing our engines and also adjusting different engines. We are also turnkey power engineering provider, mainly in Czech Republic and in Central Eastern Europe, but with the plans to roll this for the other markets in the near future. If we will have a look at the global map, we are covering a majority of the territories where the CHP makes sense. We have headquarters in the Czech Republic, production plants in Czech Republic and Germany, and offices in United States, Russia, Poland, Slovak Republic, and in Germany. We have partners mostly in other countries, and it's almost 50 business or more than 50 business partners all around the world. So let's get back to the main topic. I would like to say that for today's world, our CHP are ready for hydrogen, but the hydrogen is not available at the moment. We released initiative, invited our partners, our clients to call us for the projects where the hydrogen mixture is needed. We adjusted portfolio to 20% mixture of the hydrogen. We are ready to work with those projects with our partners on the project basis. But what is what we are seeing is that only very scarce resources of hydrogen exist and very limited resources of the green hydrogen. What is our takeaway for the midterm horizon? The pipelines are not ready for more than 20-25% of hydrogen. This is what every pipeline company telling us. The production cost of hydrogen is very high, and hydrogen basically for the affordable price doesn't exist. In the long-term horizon, we expect that the cost of hydrogen will go down, maybe in 10 and 15 years. It has been already mentioned by colleague speakers. Maybe parallel infrastructure will be in place by the time, and by the time CHPs will be completely ready for hydrogen 100%. Don't get me wrong, even we are doing some R&D tasks in our factories, and we are working with independent engine manufacturers. So already now our systems ready for 100% hydrogen with some limitations, some deratings, but technically the technology is ready for hydrogen, but the hydrogen simply doesn't exist, and not for affordable price. So what we see further in the long-term horizon, it's a changing of the role of CHP. I can only agree with what has been already said. It will be about flexibility. It will be about covering the non-base load, the peaks in winter season when renewables are not operating. What we specifically mean by flexibility is providing services for TSO operator. The CHPs with reciprocating engines are very well fit for this service because they can very quickly start. They can provide a wide range of regulative power, and they can start and stop multiple times in the day. In Czech Republic, there has been opening of the market for the system providers for the balancing services from 1 megawatt. It started this January. Before that, it was for 10 megawatts. So we really appreciate that CHPs and pool of CHPs can participate in the balancing market. And based on that, we created initiative, a pilot project for virtual block that will be providing services to TSO. The plan is to certify this block at the beginning of 2022. This block is composed from several sites, altogether installed capacity 4.8 megawatt, and only 1 megawatt will be offered to TSO and will be offering negative regulation. In the future, because we already have the system, we already have the software, we are inviting project owners, CHP owners, operators to participate, work with our platform independently on our platform or with us, leave it up to us, and we will be able to help you to generate some margin from the flexibility markets. What we see also as efficiency, how to treat emissions, not only from the CO2 perspective, but also from the NOx, using SCR technology. It is quite, let's say, big technology. We are putting it into our big Quanto series from 600 and above, 600 kW and above. What we did for our mid-size product Flexi, which is available from 300 kW up to 500 kW, we integrated the SCR system directly into the CHP open module. You can see on the picture that in exhaust manifold is actually urea injector, SCR catalyst over here in front of the exhaust heat exchanger. There is integrated SCR switchboard, internal reservoir for urea, and also air compressor. What is not inside is urea tank. It's placed either in the container or outside. This is bringing us to the output emissions below 100 milligrams per cubic meter, which is below standards that are available, but we are getting ready for the strengthening emission requirements also for NOx. Example of a very efficient solution. It's very frequently used in Czech Republic, but we do not see it very often in other markets. So it has been already mentioned by colleagues from INNIO. In Czech Republic is very often used, and this combination is working from CHP, and the exhaust heat from intercooler is put into the heat pump. And by that, we are increasing efficiency by some 10 to 13%. On the top of that, we can use exhaust gases that are already cooled down for 150 degrees C, put it into the economizer, condense the energy here, and provide another low potential heat from the economizer and get to efficiencies above 100%. As you can see, for example, 1.6 megawatt solution here in the table below. And that was it from my short presentation. Thank you very much. I'm open for questions.
Thanks, Jiří. That was really interesting. Yeah, I have a question for you. Given all of those technological advances you've just shown us, I was talking to Dora before about climate goals and targets. What do you think are the main challenges for the EU to achieve its pretty ambitious climate goals?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. As in my view, as a CHP manufacturer, I must answer that it's about preceding technology, and we need to foster those technologies like hydrogen production, and enable this happens to have this bridge gas available. From my personal perspective, I feel that these issues where we are now are caused by overconsumption. That it's linked not only with CO2 that is in atmosphere, but it's linked with the consumption. So if we will start measuring by different meter, by different rule, and focus on lower consumption, we might help also to get to the neutral emissions much faster.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, I'd agree with you there. Jiří, thanks for now. I'll bring you back for some more questions with the rest of the panelists fairly soon, after we've heard from our final speaker, who's Gabriel. Gabriel Diaz is Digital Technology Business Development Manager at Solar Turbines. Gabriel, you would like to join us and give us your presentation for the day.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Kelvin. Thank you, colleagues in the panel today. I'm going to share my screen in just a few minutes. And the topic of today, it's pretty clear. It is about it. Well, we were asked to talk about energy efficiency solutions and how this is aligned and will help, will be converging with the Green Deal that has been, defined for the European Union. And that is what I'm going to talk to today. I believe most of the people today connected here, and I thank you all for your patience as well, and to wait until the very end of it. Will this not me right away? You are more or less familiar with what the cogeneration is, and you are probably followers of this technology that was initiated some years ago, and that provides really high efficiency. So what I'm going to do today. I have prepared my presentation based in 3 different blocks. So I want to talk about first the importance of efficiency in CHP, no matter what type of CHP we're talking, maybe engines, maybe gas turbines. In my case, I'm going to talk about gas turbines because I'm working for Solar Turbines, so that we manufacture, turbo generators that go into many CHP installations in Europe. So how important it is to be efficient and to keep the efficiency as high as possible in a CHP plant. I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about how the CHP, and most of my colleagues have talked already about what's the future of CHP in Europe and in the world. We have a lot of pressure, for the sustainability aspects, but I think that we have a good history here, a good story as well to explain. Most of my colleagues today already talked about the alternative gases that we can use, in particular hydrogen. I'm going to talk about that for a minute. And finally, I will would like to touch the point that our CHP installations that were isolated, that were working, let's say, for years in isolation in industries, let's say in facilities, industrial facilities, they have now to start interacting with other actors, right? Being the other actors, maybe other generating assets in the same plant, or maybe the grid, or maybe other, actors that have and play different roles in the new, let's say, market, energy market, as we speak. So let me move forward and talk first of all about high efficiency, how important it is high efficiency. And to do that, what I think the best is to take a case, create some numbers around it and see what really happens when we talk about efficiency. We lose efficiency or we gain efficiency, and what that represents in two ways, which is financially for the plant, but also in the sustainability aspect of it, which is today very important. So imagine that we have this 8.5 megawatt, facility industrial that requires 20 tons of steam, okay, which is pretty typical, I would say, in Europe. It can be higher, it can be bigger or smaller, but this is a classic, let's say, CHP installation. And in this particular case, we're going to talk about the CHP based on a gas turbine, of course, a solar gas turbine. So in a case like that, we would be thinking about a gas turbine of about 8 megawatts, electrical generation, and a boiler attached to it so that we could recover the exhaust of that gas turbine. So I'm going to show you 3 different cases. The first case is, imagine that we have a simple recovery with a boiler, okay? And let's see what happens with efficiency and the rest of it. We're going to see what happens as well with the same plant in which we don't recover the complete heat, okay? So that we lose heat on the bypass stack, or we don't have the means to recover it completely. And the third case is, what if in the same, power plant, the same CHP, we improve efficiency by installing additional recovery systems, like for instance, an economizer, at the back end of this boiler. So as you can imagine, the best efficiency, okay, we go from left to right. So the base case, which is a simple recovery with this kind of turbine, it has a very decent efficiency, more than 80, so 83.4%. That would be the efficiency of this plant. We have done the model. We don't have the details here, but yeah, we can give that to you if you require that. Important also is to monitor the temperature in the stack that will give us, and you are probably very well, you have a good knowledge of what CHP is and how it works. So 131 degrees in the stack, that is related to the efficiency. If we decrease the efficiency because we are losing, efficiency for many reasons, that may be several, we're gonna see how efficiency goes down, and you have this 80%, sorry, this 80.5, and you see that temperature in the stack going up. That means that we are not recovering all the heat. On the contrary, when we do an efficiency improvement in our plant, we install an economizer too in that plant that we were seeing at the beginning. We improve efficiency. Efficiency goes up, temperature in the stack goes down. Okay. And what is the effect of this in the economics and in the sustainability aspect? The first thing that we want to look at is CO2 intensity. What is the CO2 intensity of a CHP like this one? And you can see it here. This is the simple case, the base case, 261 grams per kilowatt hour produced electrical. That would be, let's say, the intensity, the footprint of this installation. When we lose efficiency, what happens with CO2 intensity? It goes up. We start to be inefficient. We generate more CO2 per kilowatt hour generated. Instead, what happens when we improve efficiency? We have a reduction of CO2. So we have an interest, all of us, in having the most efficient possible CHP installations, whether that is gas turbines, engine, or any kind. Okay, and that would be the first principle. The second principle would be like, what about economics? Because our customers, our CHP operators, they like also to be sustainable, not only from an environment standpoint, but also financially. We need to make money with that. Okay, so if we take these installations and we do the feasibility analysis with some particular price points, what we're going to see is that we generate more than 300 euros per every hour of operation. Okay, and that is a pretty standard level of margin that takes and considers standard pricings, average pricings in Europe. gas, electricity, and of course, tons of CO2. So what happens when we lose efficiency? We lose as well profitability. And what happens when we increase efficiency? We gain profitability. So the message again here is, okay, efficiency has two effects. So it has an effect on sustainability, and it has an effect on the financials. So I think that, these are, very obvious reasons to work on improving our efficiency and maintaining it, the whole life of the installation. Efficiency has a third effect, which is the fact that our model, our gas turbine or our power plant, in that case, becomes more robust to changes in pricing. So when we see prices going up or down, if we have a very efficient installation, we're going to see that the criticality of these movements are affecting less our plant. This is an example, okay? This is a real example. These curves are, the three curves that you can probably identify quickly. One is the price of the gas in the last month. This is from January to September 2021. This is the electrical market, okay? And this is based on the Italian gross market, but it could be from any country in Europe because we have seen how it went up. It went to the sky during summertime. And we also have seen the CO2 ton going up. So what is the effect of all these three things? We have, let's say, the simple recovery installation. We have the loss of efficiency and the gain of efficiency. And what we see here is that, you see that when the level of the prices are low or relatively low, we have a decent, let's say, even profitability. When the prices move up and we are concerned about all of them, the profitability of my installation continues to grow. So it's proportionally higher. It doesn't mean that higher prices are better. It means that the system well-defined and well-designed resists well to the price changes. Of course, when we have these prices so high, and we are producing something, we manage an industry of something, we have a bigger problem than just our CHP because we are paying a lot for the products we produce, of course. So that would be one of the messages. The second message I would like to share with you, and it has been already pointed by some of my colleagues as well. If we took the footprint, the CO2 footprint of CO2 intensity, if you want, in all these countries in Europe, okay, with the electricity they produce today with fossil fuels, and these are numbers from 2021, what we're going to see is that our CHP installation burning natural gas has a much lower level, let's say, of CO2 intensity. Okay, why is that? First of all, we need to be careful because these numbers, we are comparing here a CHP burning natural gas with the country producing electricity only with fossil fuels. So we take away from this picture all the electricity that is produced with renewable power in these countries. Okay, so the opportunity to gain, if you want to get gains on CO2, to reduce the CO2 intensity, you see it's in every country. There's no country in Europe where a CHP makes sense today from a sustainability standpoint. And I think this is a very important point, not only for us as manufacturers, but also for the leaders, political leaders that need to legislate, that need to give us, rules and norms to follow. So not incentivizing, not giving an opportunity to CHP, as we have seen before, is wrong. It's not the right thing to do. Okay. And not only because it makes sense today, as we speak, with the prices and with the natural gas, so the burning is still fossil fuel, although, we all know that the reputation is not the best. The numbers tell us this makes sense. It's also important for the future because, as we have seen, using gas turbines, okay, with the different alternative fuels that we have been seeing with other of my colleagues as well during the presentations today, makes sense because we all reduce as well the CO2 intensity. Today, a lot of the still power in Europe is being produced using coal. And by the way, in these last weeks, we know that the major utilities in Europe are still provisioning, are purchasing big amount of coal because they have concerns about, the supply of natural gas for this winter time. So it's a very difficult balance, and it's also very political. But what is true from a technology standpoint is that if we switch from coal to gas, we would reduce CO2 intensity 50%. So it's a significant amount that could be reduced. If we start mixing this natural gas with other gases like biogas, hydrogen, like we speak, we can further reduce, the CO2 intensity up to the point in which we use only hydrogen, and then we have a zero intensity of CO2. Okay, and that is where we think that everyone wants to go, and the technology, let's say, that is getting ready for that as well. And we in Solar Turbines, we're also getting ready for that. Why is that? Because we started already burning hydrogen in 1985. So we have quite a long experience burning hydrogen. There in 1985, this is when we started using almost 40% of hydrogen on our turbines. Okay, they were very isolated projects, if you want, but that was already our initial experience. So since then, we have developed more turbines burning hydrogen in standard combustion, but also we have started some time ago to develop the dry low NOx emission combustors as well, burning hydrogen. And today, like I have to say, everyone that presented today has the same in their portfolio. Our products are ready to burn 20% hydrogen, let's say, from the pipeline. So for any customer in any place of the world, specifically in Europe, that would like to have today a gas turbine package from Solar Turbines and has 20% hydrogen available, this is not a problem. Okay, even if you have a higher amount of hydrogen, we could do it. Okay, there are systems and technologies to do it, and we could do up to 100%. So the experience we have, Adde Nelson, our vice president, was speaking in the panel before, and he said that already we have more than 50 gas turbines running already on hydrogen since long time ago, and we have accumulated more than 2 million hours on hydrogen. So which is quite impressive, let's say, in that technology. The second element that it's critical, and our customers and everyone is interested, is about the technology of capturing that carbon. Okay, which is a different aspect than burning hydrogen. When you burn 100% hydrogen, you don't have the problem of capturing the carbon because you don't have it. But until then, there is technology to capture that carbon, and this is not new technology. So there is nothing new that we as Solar Turbines can offer there. But recently, our mother company, Caterpillar, made an acquisition of this company called Carbon Point Solutions. And the technology that Carbon Point Solutions is bringing to Solar and Caterpillar, it's not the carbon capture technology, because this is something new, this is well known. But what we do is with this technology is apply the exhaust gas recirculation. What that means? That means that, any carbon capture system, would do a good job, but it would do a better job if the concentration of CO2 is high in that flue gas. The problem with gas turbines and other burning technologies is that the concentration of CO2 is pretty low. So what we do with exhaust gas recirculation, what we intend to do, because we are piloting projects with that, is to concentrate the CO2 in the exhaust of the turbine, such that then capturing the carbon from it becomes more economically interesting and technically feasible. We are developing technology here. We make those acquisitions, and we hope and we believe that in the near future we're going to be able to run our first pilots and then our first commercial projects as well. The last topic or point that I had prepared for today was talking about, that's fine. We have CHP, efficient CHP. We have alternative fuels to burn. So we believe we have technology that is well set, let's say, for the future. So what is next? The next is, it was also pointed by some of my colleagues, is about, how this works together with the rest of the participants in the energy market that is changing. Okay, so there is how the energy needs to be managed is different from how it was in the past. Why is that? Because customers are evolving, that are not anymore just generators. They participate in the grid. They provide, balancing services, as my colleague was saying before, or they can also participate in the capacity markets or dispatch markets when required. So you cannot just be a passive, actor in this market. You need to start doing something, interact. Okay. You see also companies investing more in decentralized power and more in renewables as well. You see the new players like these aggregators that provide these balancing services as well in the grid. And also you have actors, new roles appearing of companies providing all the software and all the IT solutions for customers to be able to participate and benefit into this new situation that in the end, what happens is that generates new business models, which are different from the ones in the past. Okay. So what that means that if you have a power plant, a CHP inside an industry, or just a generating power plant, okay, we typically, as a supplier, as solar turbines, as a manufacturer, we have connected always, our equipment to our digital platform called Insight. Okay, but we now extend that to the complete installation. So we take and we recover. Let's say that we take all the signals, all the information of the power plant alone, not only the gas turbine, but the whole components on them, and also the industrial facility information. So that with combining these with all the external information from the power plant, like the prices on the market, the natural gas pricing, the price of the CO2 that continues to change. So integrating all this information, we are able to manage the power plant in a different way, smarter than before, let's say, and in a more harmonized, if you want, manner, together as well with the changes that we see happening in the electrical markets, more renewable power, more intermittency, so more fluctuation of prices. All this needs to be taken into consideration when we manage today our power plant. To do that, we have developed as well, not only our digital platform and solutions just for the gas turbine, but also, which is what we have been doing for years. But we also have developed, plant monitoring, services and products that will help us to acquire, all this data and information. That in the end, what is going to happen is that it will bring the possibility to start, using optimization algorithms that may have different type of objectives, like financial optimization. It can be a sustainability optimization. It can be set, depending on what the customer or the operator requires in their power plant. And having said that, let's say in a short summary, in our opinion, high efficiency smart CHP still has a role to play in this energy transition in Europe. I think all of us said the same. Number one, because it still financially supports the industry in Europe. So it provides, the competitiveness that we may lose, by the big investments we need to do, or that the European Union needs to do. I think that was said also at the beginning, Kelvin, some of the people talked about it. I think also it supports the energy transition because it lowers the CO2 intensity. It's doing it already now, okay, and it's ready to switch to low carbon, if you want, fuels or no carbon fuels like hydrogen, when this will become available technically and also financially, feasible. And that is coming. Okay, so we are ready for that. And finally, what is also another element that is very important is the system reliability. As we move into more and more renewable power, we see more disruption in the grid, if you want. And, this kind of power produced with CHP, because of the use of natural gas, of course, is extremely reliable. So it's something that really helps stabilizing the system. So finally, just to say that CHP, high efficiency CHP, is helping to deliver the EU Green Deal. And this is more or less what I wanted to say today and share with you. I hope it was aligned with my colleagues before. And I'm ready for any question in case you have any. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gabriel. That was great. That was fantastic. I had a number of questions. However, we've overrun our time slot by a bit. I hope you'll agree, everyone watching, and there's certainly a lot of you watching, that it was worth it. I certainly think it was. We've got about 1 minute left, which is time enough for me to thank Gabriel and all the rest of our speakers, Alex, Stefan, Carl, Dora, and Jiří. It's been a fantastic afternoon of discussion. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, the audience, for joining. I hope you have enjoyed it. It's been a great session. I hope you managed to tune into some of the preceding ones as well. And I equally do hope you can join tomorrow for the second day of COGEN Europe's annual conference. It's certainly worth catching if you can. So that just leaves me to say thank you once again, speakers and audience. It's been great. I've really enjoyed it. I hope you have too. And goodbye for now.
Thank you to all our panelists in the last session for this afternoon. We've had an exciting afternoon already. We've heard from the European Commission, the European Parliament, from an intergovernmental organization, the IEA, and then pivoting to an interesting and very forward-looking discussion amongst our industry leaders, CEOs, about the future of the energy market and what solutions are there, where the investments need to go, and so forth. Followed by a very interesting panel just now looking at technological solutions available today and tomorrow in the future. Thank all the speakers who have contributed and as well as the moderators to make this a successful afternoon. And in the meantime, I wish you all a very pleasant evening and thank you for joining us today.